Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of So You're Living in a Simulation. I'm your hostess, Jolie, aka your one black friend. I've just come back from a walk, and on my way back from my walk for my mental health, I ran into an individual who I met 2 weeks ago. When I met him, he was working on my neighbor's yard across the street, and he said, "Where do I know you from?" And I said, "I'm not sure." He was like, "You're a model." And I was like, "Yes." Not anymore. He's like, "I know I've seen you from somewhere." And I was like, "Probably." And he was like, "I'm not going to rest until I figured it out." Today, came back from my walk and he was again working across the street. And he said, "I know where I know you from. I've seen you on a Buddhist website." I said, "Okay. Well, that's interesting. Sometimes people just use my videos, however, without letting me know, but it is what it is." And he said, "I have questions for you." And I was like, "Okay, well, go for it." And so we started to have a very interesting conversation. He said, "How did you get to where you are now?" And I said to him, "I can tell you a story. I can construct meaning. I can tell you from the beginning to now, but it would just be a story. At the end of the day, Joe, the ego, the person you're seeing right now, this was what I was always supposed to do, at least up until this point in my life. I was always going to be drawn to Eastern philosophy because I was drawn to Eastern philosophy before I was even conscious. I was always going to end up doing philosophical talks because as I evolved, so did technology at this period of time in which I found myself. I have always been that person that looked around and said, something isn't right here. Something feels off. And what I said to him was, think about our egos the way you think about a Ferris wheel. All right. Each seat is your ego. That's part of the ride. And he said, "Yes, the wheel of time." I said, "Yes." So I am a spirit occupying the form called Joe. And this was the role that Joe was always going to play. Now, I could very much deviate from this role right now and decide not to do the podcast, not to do the talks, not to do my walks. But just as I'd woken up and realized that something wasn't right about reality and the nature of reality, so I also know that I'm more than likely not going to deviate off this path. This is my path. All I can do in this path is try to be more conscious. And all I can do is try to move in ways where I am not distracted by people, circumstances, situations that will try to deviate me from my path. But I know in my heart, this was the path I always was going to take. And he said, "I feel different from everybody else and I don't like it." I said, why wouldn't you like being different? He said, "Because it's isolating." I said, "You're not isolated. I've been running the podcast long enough to know that people like you, deviant thinkers, free thinkers, the ones that look up and go, wait, something's not right. You're not alone. The problem is that you are separated. So you take 100 people or even 1,000 people. And of that 1,000 people, there's usually only one or two people that are the deviant thinkers, the free thinkers, the ones that look up and say, something's not right. The ones that look up and say, I don't want to be a sheep. The ones that look up and say, I want to challenge reality. Why am I living like this? What is life? It doesn't mean you're the only person who thinks like that. The problem is that you just happen to be in pockets surrounded by people who don't think like you or don't think at all. Thankfully, I looked up and I saw a round cactus, a barrel cactus. And in that barrel cactus, on it rather, were all these spikes. And then in between the spikes were flowers. I said, you and people who think like you are like that flower, right? And you find yourself or you found yourself surrounded by spikes. And you spend most of your life trying to be a spike because you can't see that you're a flower, but there's nothing wrong with being a flower. That is inherently part of the entire plant. You're supposed to be a flower. I'm supposed to be a flower. The fabric of life, the wheel of time, the fabric or the terrain that is called space-time is already pre-written. And even if there are a myriad of realities or the multiverse or whatever, I will always play the role that I'm playing now. Conscious, sentient, aware. And not just in this ego, not just in this form, but every incarnation that I take, I will play this function. Because all of time is happening right now. There is no past, there is no present, there is no future. It's all now. It's just your consciousness that moves through it. It's okay to be the flower in a barrel of spikes. You are serving your function. I asked him, when did you realize that something was different. He said, I've always felt that. I said, well, then that's your function. Of course, you're always going to feel that. That means inherently you are different. Look at the barrel again. You are the flower amidst the spikes. Nothing wrong with the spikes, but you're meant to be the flower. I said that we have, throughout history, you've got people like the Senecas, you've got people like Aristotle, you've got people like Plato, you've got people like Jesus, you've got people like Buddha. They're all the same. Nietzsche would call the Übermensch, the Superman, the godlike beings, beings of higher level intelligences, whatever you want to call it, anointed ones, whatever you want to call it, chosen ones, whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to have. It's just part of the game. And then he said, I'm concerned that people might think I'm crazy or insane. And I said, well, tell me why. And he said, because I don't think any of this is real. I said, you say that around the wrong group of people. Yes, it sounds like madness. But if you read the writings of Aldous Huxley, if you read the writings of Robert Anton Wilson, if you read the writings of any neuroscientist or any neurobiologist, they will tell you that, yes, reality is a construct put together by your central nervous system. Your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your taste, your sense of smell, all of that, your senses are the doors of perception in which you are forced to perceive reality through. Aldous Huxley wrote about this in The Doors of Perception. I think in the book, Our Holographic Universe, Michael Talbot wrote about this as well. David, I don't remember, but Pribham was one of them as well. They're just the holographic universe, a holonomic model. Anthony Peake has written about this. This is a construct. We have our 5, some would argue 6 senses, some would argue 7 senses, but they shape what we perceive as reality. But that doesn't mean reality is what we perceive across the board. What is out there isn't what is actually out there. It's what our minds are putting together and reflecting back to us. It's all in your head. I said any neurobiologist worth their salt will tell you this exact same thing. So you're not necessarily crazy. You are either remembering or perceiving things that is innate to you, to your core. Trust that. I said the reason why I read so much is not because I don't understand intrinsically the nature of reality. The reason why I read so much is because I can point to Adam Becker, what is real, a scientist that is saying something to support what I'm saying, because that's how we define madness, right? If only one person is saying something or they can see something, then that person is mad. But if you can show that there are lettered individuals that are saying the same thing, then you're not so mad anymore, because now it's more than one person perceiving and understanding reality the way you do. You find support for what you intrinsically and intuitively know and observe. That's the point of reading. Sometimes also to remind you of things you already know. I said, I'm a flower on that cactus. But what saves me is the word maybe. Right? I could say, I feel isolated from other people. But then when I throw in the word maybe, I remember, well, no, I can be amongst a crowd of people that don't think like me, that just want to watch football or TV or anything like that. But I am not necessarily isolated. I can move with them. I can laugh with them. I can joke with them. I can even convince some of them to my thinking. It's just that I have a preference for people who think differently, and that's okay. So I hold on to the word maybe to keep me from feeling like this young man felt, which is, I don't want to be different. Well, you are different, and that's okay. But you're different in the way those flowers are amidst the spike. It's okay to be different amidst the spikes of flowers. That is your function. You're supposed to be a flower. In the fabric and the tapestry of space-time, you're supposed to be a flower. Be that, and be okay with that. And then he said, I used to meditate a lot, and then I stopped. I said, why did you stop? And he said, because my family said that it was demonic. I said, all meditation is you are training your mind to do what it wants and to focus on what you want it to focus on. That's it. It's not demonic. If it's that deep, then focus on a biblical verse. And he said, I used to meditate for hours. And then I had to let it go because people were saying it's bad. He said, when he reads the Bible, everything else seems like noise except for the section about Jesus. And I said, well, then trust that. I'm not a religious person. I can't tell you what you believe is wrong. But from my understanding, Jesus was a real person. His name wasn't Jesus, it was Yeshua. But some historical figures did write about him. I said, use Grok for research and ask for data that points to people having some knowledge of an individual. But all he was a conscious, awake, and aware teacher. The mythology that occurred around him, that happened ages after he died. People like Jesus have existed through space and time. What happens is, after the fact, people then construct a narrative around him. I said, look up the Essiac religious sect. They have their ties and they go back to the East. And maybe that's what's happening here, that there's a part of you that maybe recognizes Eastern mysticism feels natural to you, and also understands on some level that there is a connection between the teachings of Jesus and the East. Again, I'm not here to say that the Bible is right. You guys should know how I feel about that. But I'm saying for him and his path, he's got to learn to trust what works for him. I don't know where his path is going, but what I said was, young man, trust your heart. And then to go back again to what he said, well, none of this feels real. I gave him the Huxley example, but what I also said was, you've got different kinds of constructs that our mind can exist in. I said, you've got this reality, you've got virtual reality, you've got dream reality. And each reality that you exist in, you've got even astral realities when people have out-of-body experiences. Each reality that you exist in, you use a different form, right? So I've got this physical form, what I call an ego. This is a vehicle that I use to navigate Earth, right? Joe, or whatever. But you've got your astral bodies when you have out-of-body experiences. When you play a video game, you've got a virtual body, right? And then when you are in a dream, you've got that dream body as well. And there's probably more constructs. What I'm saying to him was, or what I said to him was, recognize that none of those are quote unquote real. They're constructs. We could see that they're different types of constructs. We may not fully understand them yet. We have a better understanding of a simulated construct than we do about a dream construct. Some have argued that the dream construct is just a creation of your mind, while others have argued that no, or actually aspects of yourself, your consciousness is actually traveling to new and actual worlds. There's even constructs. There's also realities that you can get to when you, for example, take DMT, right? You keep running into the same elf entities when you take DMT or when you take ayahuasca. There is a multidimensional world that the human mind can exist in and visit. This is just one of them. This just happens to be, as Einstein put it, a most persistent one. But what I said was, what actual insanity isn't looking to this world and understanding its construct nature. It's trying to live by different rules in the worlds that you find yourself in, right? So I can't apply the rules of a dream reality or virtual reality to this one. I know that in a dream reality, I can jump off a building and fly. Insanity would be trying to do that here. Know the rules of the reality that you found yourself in, and then move accordingly. What I said was, I believe that this reality is purely mind driven. Everything is slowed down here. Time is slowed down here. Your reality experiences are different. You can't have instantaneous things. You can't say, I want this thing, and then it happens. It's slowed down on purpose. You feel every moment, every second, tick, tock, tick, talk. It's a time construct in a way that a virtual reality isn't, in a way that an astral reality isn't, in a way that a dream reality isn't. This one is time focused. And so I said, what I believe this reality is that on its base level, I don't want to say it's slavery. I don't want to say it's imprisonment. What I want to say is, though, is that it is almost like a construct in the sense of, that's not the right word. For a lack of better word right now, I will say that you are imprisoned. That is the core default setting of the game. You're not actually imprisoned. You're imprisoned the way, I can't remember his name. He was friends with Ram Dass. Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary did a lot of research on LSD in the 60s and the 70s, and then he was like entrapped by the government and they put him in jail. They found like a little bit of weed in his car, which was not his, but they put him in jail for like an insane amount of time. Actually, historically, like no person has ever gotten that kind of prison sentence before, and they imprisoned him. But even when he was in prison, he didn't treat it like a prison. He would astral project, he would communicate with his friends, and he helped the prisoners that were there with him. So imagine this world like that. It's purely mental. And what I said to him was recognizing that you are in a prison. And remember, it's only a prison in the sense of like, if I go to play a video game and the video game is about breaking out of prison, I'm not really in a prison. I'm just in a simulation of a prison. I am free. I'm just in a simulation of a prison. And I said that becomes a challenge. The challenge is, can you do what you want to do despite everything pulling against you and trying to imprison you? I don't mean like harm people, obviously. But the thing is, what I said to him was, treat meditation as inside the way you would also go through life. I have a path that I need to be on. I've got my books I need to write. I've got my podcasts I need to record. I've got clips I need to put out. I've got paintings I need to paint. That is the path. I've got a family I need to raise and take care of my child, right? And I'm seeking like beautiful experiences. That's my path. That is my mantra. That is my Hari Rama, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Rama, Hari Krishna. That's my path. That is my mantra. And what happens is you're trying to walk this noble path. This is what you know. This is what Joe exists to do. I feel this knowledge here. And then somebody comes with their bullshit, right? This is my mantra. Here comes their bullshit. The way you meditate is very simple, right? You repeat your mantra. When your brain starts to deviate, you bring it back. The mind tries to deviate, you bring it back. The mind tries to deviate, you bring it back to the path. And that's why meditation is important. And the more you get into the habit of it, the stronger your will becomes, which then allows you to also emulate that same redirection to your own life, right? So you repeat the mantra in your mind when you're meditating. Your mind tries to shift, monkey mind. You say no, and you bring it right back. That's all meditation is. And what that does is by doing it within, it allows you to do it without, so that when you're interacting with people and you're like, I'm going to have a good day, and then somebody comes with their bullshit, or your mind comes with your bullshit, or whatever it is, you go, no, we're not doing that. This is my path. And this path is what takes you to moksha, to liberation, to freedom. And so you have to get into the practice of that. And he said, well, when I tried to do it, people have said it was demonic. And I said, okay, but you're doing this job. You're working a 9 to 5, putting traps for rodent. I'm having a conversation with you. I can tell you're a deeply intelligent person. You can't really control your time right now, but you can control your mind, at least right now. You should have the freedom to, at the very least, do what you want to do with your own fucking mind. At that point, he said, I have to go. They're calling me at work. He said, I want to have another conversation with you where I don't have to rush off. And then I said, okay, well, you go. And then I was taking something in the trash. So he helped me take it to the trash. And he said, can I share with you my mantra? And I said, go ahead. And he said, I don't know much about Hinduism. I just know this. And he proceeded to, for a good 45 seconds, do a Hindu chant. And that was his chant. And he even said it. This is like a Mexican guy, but he said it with a perfect Hindi accent. And he just recited, he's like, this is what I meditate on. And I just smiled. And I turned to him, and his name was Salvador. And I said, Salvador, that's amazing. I said, what you've just helped me remember is what I said to you at the beginning of this conversation. The Joe, the ego, it's just a seat in the Ferris wheel. So this was what she was always going to do. My path is what I was always going to do. I can deviate here and there, of course. And I can strengthen my will by redirecting to my own path and not letting people take me off my path. But I said, you were clearly Hindi in the past life. It's just like me. I talked a long time ago about how I would repeatedly draw a mandala over and over again. I grew up in Nigeria. I had no business drawing a mandala. When I heard the song My Sweet Lord by the Beatles, George Harrison, there was a chant, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna. They sing the song. My brain stuck to that. My brain picked up on that. Why? I said, why are we intrinsically drawn to things? I said, because at the end of the day, you're not this form. This is a 30-something-year-old man, but he's not a 30-something-year-old man. His vehicle is 30-something years old. I said, you're older than this. We talk about reincarnation without pulling it apart. I am not Joe. I am in Joe. This is not my first go. My soul is old. Your soul is old. And here's the thing, even if our minds may not remember our past lives, there is still a recognition that happens where it be with people that you've had past life experiences with, your soul will be drawn to them for better or worse. When I talked about this on my Instagram subscription channel, sometimes the person that you're drawn to, you say is your soulmate, might actually be your soul enemy. There's a recognition there. But just because there's a recognition doesn't mean that person was actually good. We really need to understand that we are much older than our physical forms. All of you that are afraid of, oh, I'm turning 30 or I'm turning 40 or I'm turning 50 or I'm turning... I posted a video of my mom's 70. Look at her. It was on my Instagram, but I'll post a clip here. This woman is not... She's ageless. You're ageless. You're subscribing to a mindset that has told you that once you hit a certain point, once your body hits a certain point, you will start degrading. And you believe that. And so it happens because you are actually the driver at the steering wheel. I told myself I'm not going to age past 28, and I have not. If I told you guys my actual age, you wouldn't believe it. It's just I'm living proof of that. I've said to you guys several times in past episodes that it's not biological. It's what you're doing to it. How do you take care of your physical form? If I've got a 1975 Coupe de Ville and you bought a 1975 Coupe de Ville, but you put it out in the car and I kept mine garage and I didn't wear it down, it's going to look great over 100 years versus if you didn't take care of yours. But if you're drinking copious amounts of alcohol and eating sugar and not eating clean and this, then you're stressing yourself out, you're not getting enough rest, it will show. That's it. That's what aging is. It's not, has nothing to do with how many rotations around the sun there is that your body has gone through. Absolutely nothing. You've got coins that people collect that are hundreds of years old that still look in mint condition. That should tell you something. It's how you take care of it. That's it. What you expose the physical form to. But what I said to him was, obviously you were Hindi in a past life, because why did you gravitate towards that? We remember things. And by we, I mean the heart remembers things that the mind can't. Even people with Alzheimer's, I've seen videos of a dancer who had Alzheimer's. She couldn't remember anything else, but then the music started playing. She used to be a ballerina and she got up and she danced. Her body remembered. And I think it's the same thing. If you believe that we have our memories wiped when we come into this world, it's probably the case. All right, it's a function. Even you can see that with dreams. When you have a dream, it feels so real. And as soon as you open your eyes, it starts to fade. And you can only remember certain aspects of it. And then you have deja vu. And that's like that soul recognition of I've seen this before. I've dreamt this before. I've lived this before. Something about yourself remembers. And so it echoes and things that you're drawn to. Pay attention. Things that you have no business being drawn to, like a Mexican exterminator, that's the word. Being drawn to Eastern philosophy and mysticism and being able to recite a mantra like it was his first tongue. The rest he couldn't hold on to. And then him also being drawn to the teachings of Christ, but only a very small section. He said, everything else feels like noise. I said, brother, then trust that. I'll give you one thing further. Connect the two. Look up Essiact sect and use Grok to ask about what was Jesus's connections to the East. What is that? And remind yourself. But trust that you're not crazy. As I was saying, the only thing that would be considered crazy is if you try to bring the rules of one reality into this one. If you start to see DMT elves in this reality, okay, well, that might be a problem, right? It's when you start to blur the lines. If you try to jump off a building, as I said, and tell yourself you could fly the way you can fly in a lucid dream, that's a problem. Understand the rules of this construct that you find yourself in. I talked to him about, when you touch things, it's electrons repulsing. There's no such thing as anything that's solid. This is electrons repulsion. It's just electrons pushing back. We know we're all E equals MC squared, like energy is matter, matter is energy, right? We know this. We know this is a construct, but stay within the construct of the game. And for me, the rules in the game are you got to wake up from here and you got to live your path and not be enslaved. I said, most people will work the 9 to 5 for 42 years for nothing. I said, reclaim your time. Let that be the challenge, right? If you have a big house that you don't need, downsize. If you're driving a fancy car that you don't need, downsize. Fast every once in a while, but reclaim your time. Don't treat life as something you need a vacation from. Rest. Focus on what you need to do and be that driven the way you are focused on a mantra. This is very important. It's worth repeating. My mantra is the Hare Rama mantra. When you meditate and your mind tries to pull you to the side, you pull it back. My life mantra is creation, art, podcasts, writing. When anything tries to pull me off that path, I pull it back. Being a good mother, that is my mantra. Living a blessed and joyful life, that is my mantra. And I need to be just as disciplined in repeating that and staying on that path and being as true to Joe's path as I possibly can, as I am disciplined when I sit and meditate and repeat my mantra in my mind. As within, so without. Again, I'll repeat and I'll leave you with this. You are not your physical form. I am not the only person who said it. I'm not the first person to say this. I will not be the last person to say this. This is a vehicle that you live within. You are much older than 30 or 40 or 50. And this is not your first go. Start understanding that you're old as shit. That's okay. That's okay. You've looped this before. And then we live now in the age of AI. AI has its problems. ChatGPT is particularly problematic, but there are others, Grok, Claude, Gemini. Ask questions and you'll get instant answers, the things that you're naturally drawn to. Find out more about it, especially if it's something that doesn't fit in the culture that you were born in. That should help you construct Maybe what you were before this one. I know everybody wants to be Cleopatra, but we can't all be Cleopatra. I can, at the very least, for me, I can trace back at least two different egos that I've occupied before this one. Maybe three, if I sit and actually think about it. Okay, I'm being four. I can think about four. One was a World War II soldier. One was in ancient Greece, obviously one in Africa, and one is a Hindi. But there's probably more. Try it. Try the exercise. This might or might not resonate with everybody. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. It's not meant for you. If it does, try the experiment. I said this, and I'll end it here. I said it to the young man. I said, yeah, this is clearly not your first incarnation. He said, I have had seven. But he said it with such conviction. I said, okay, well then, you know better than I do. I said, but if you would have said that to somebody in the West who doesn't understand Eastern philosophy, they would call you mad. But you clearly have been studying this stuff for a while, regardless of what you do for a living. I said, if you went to India and you said that to a Hindi or Buddhist, they would say, okay, because there, that sort of thinking isn't madness. And that's not a long flight away. It's all here, space and time, right now, in our present reality. And we're all living it right now, past, present, future. The versions of you that you dream about and then you forget. The children that you have in your dreams and then you wake up and you forget. It's all happening simultaneously right now. And the soul doesn't forget. Thanks for watching.